welcome to Gemcast Live. Today we have a new reader and a new writer, like heading in a new direction for us over here on Hidden Gems. Without further ado, let me introduce to Randy, whose story we will be reading today.
Hi, Aiden. Thank you. And the reader will be, it's Bob, right?
Hey,
And the
yeah,
story, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I was pronouncing the name right. But the story I've called Those Who Know Earth, and it's a serial. Each chapter progresses the story by 25 years. And so it's kind of like an anthology of little novellas, but they're interconnected, of course. And as it goes, we see different people age and new cast comes in. This is the third chapter. I wanted to pick an exciting one, and spoilers be damned. But anyhow, so we've seen people get selected to go on this interstellar ship, right? And it's going to take a 100-year voyage. So no one from the start will be alive by the end. Uh, this is the first chapter into the voyage, and there has been um, new generation born, grow up at this point. It's 25 years in, and I'm trying to explore some of the same kind of sociology that's developed there. But in the midst of that, there's a mini crisis as um, they developed that they learned that one of the children is pregnant by a half sibling that she didn't realize. And some of the people are going to be reacting to that. And because of the small population, there's a lot of rules and requirements around reproduction and so on. It's making it difficult for them. But then again, a lot of the people in this section, this is all that they've ever known. So thanks for the opportunity here, Aiden and Bob.
Okay, that sounds exciting. A little bit of the Giver vibes. So, and I'm reading, and just so everybody knows, I'm reading along this story. So, like, yeah, the spoiler lack is going to be interesting. And so, without further ado, let me introduce today's reader, Bhavana Varma. Hopefully, I pronounced that right.
The first A is the important one. Yeah, no problem. I know it's common to pronounce it that way. Yeah, so I guess I'll start off. Um, those who knew Earth, Impact, Part 5. Bojang crawled out of the berth he shared with Hoshi. Crew quarters were a little more than an alcove with a bed built for two adults content to get very close. Two single beds, a few feet away, completed the accommodations, and when their son, Tao, rolled out of his to join them, it was even cozier. Bojang knew other young fathers preferred the side bunk for themselves rather than endure a nightly shuffle. By the time he had gotten back from the hygiene room, his wife had awoken and was feeding Tao. Like him, Hoshi was half Asian and half European, although in her case, the Asian nationality was Japanese rather than Chinese. This distinction, his father assured him, was extremely important, but the historical and cultural differences it signified the young couple sometimes had trouble keeping straight. National distinctions were largely irrelevant now. The crew's task was to take the best of humanity and fashion a culture out of it. But humanity was very attached to distinctions, even between kin or lovers. Good morning, Hoshi said, blinking as the hall light entered the dim room. He shut the thin, soundproof door, closing their quarters, and dropped on the bed next to her. Let's not leave here today. Hmm. She gave him a skeptical look. But could we possibly need what could we possibly need in all the ship that isn't here right now? He said. He traced the contours of her calf and thigh. She raised an eyebrow and shrugged, so her nightgown fell off her other shoulder, bearing the unclaimed breast for his gaze, which readily claimed it. Perhaps Thou would fall asleep, and the couple could miss breakfast together. Thou soiled himself loudly and grabbed her at her exposed nipple. The diaper receptacle, for one thing, she said, removing the child and handing him over. Bojang took him and rose with a sigh. Why are the products of romance so adept at undercutting it? Speak for yourself, husband. Seeing you cradle Tao, she gave a slight shiver. Let's try for number two again tonight. She rose and smoothed the sheet. It's a date. In the meantime, I'll take care of his number two. Well, that mixed metaphor killed the romance. Hmm. Good thing I've got all day to revive it. Bojang left her to get dressed while he took their son to change, babbling to him absent-mindedly in low tones. Hoshi, like him and his sister both, had a name from her paternal heritage. He had asked his mother once if she objected to the overlooking of her own culture in names, and she had smiled and replied that while naming was powerful, the hand that rocked the cradle ruled the world. There may be truth to that. While he respected his father, he felt he understood his mother better, at least at the time. But rulership was an ironic point at best. On the ship, John was God, if anyone was. Mother called the thought blasphemous when he had brought it up to her one time. That's not God, Jang. That's a tool we created to do complicated math. It won't put breath in the chest of a baby or bring the dead back to life. Father had backed mother up on this, somewhat to Bojang's surprise. It is akin to blasphemy, even if there's no divine person to take offense. John is useful, but does not belong to the realm of the sacred. It is bad enough that we come to see him as a person rather than a useful device. Listen to what it tells you. Your life often depends on heeding it. But remember, its authority comes from its readability, not its relationship. Maybe. But they only discuss such matters at the sufferance of that tool. And in the absence of anyone being brought back to life, John was as close to God as he had seen. After bringing Tao to his wife, he helped her wrap the toddler on her back in a spare sheet she had commandeered to use as an infant carrier, a practice which had spread throughout the younger mothers. They exited their berth and headed towards the stairs. The sinking feeling in his stomach was not hunger. There may be another reason I didn't want to go downstairs. I know, it's gonna be awkward. I'm torn between yelling at our sister and giving her a hug. I gave her a hug last night, and then she spent the next 5 feet up from my dad. So she has probably heard in depth how she failed to fulfill a variety of different roles, relationships, and obligations. Hoshi giggled, then said, It couldn't have been easy growing up with him. Bojang paused before opening the door to the dining room, considering the question. Easy? No. But can you complain about the results? I can't. She kissed his cheeks and pushed open the door. Like the gym, the dining room was lit brighter than the halls, largely due to the screens along the walls. These were currently set to display paintings alternating famous works from Earth's history and pieces designed by crew members in virtual. Typically, Bojang preferred realism, but surrounding the sleek angular tables and counters, the abstract pieces clashed less. The mood of the room was muted. Many of the older generation had apparently slept in, but news of the drama uncovered the previous had nonetheless spread. Small groups at the central table and the bar stools around the perimeter exchanged whispers among themselves as they took furtive glances at each other. Bojang and his wife took portions of the fruit and porridge for themselves and Tao, then looked for seats. Bojang, Elijah drew out the name, calling him over. He was seated with his wife, Hoshi's sister Yoko, along with Alex and a handful of others of their generation. Have a seat, brother. And how are you doing, little guy? He asked, as Hoshi brought Tao out and sat him on her lap. I told Alex how I managed to knock you on the butt last night, and he didn't believe me. So admit it. I didn't doubt you, Alex said flatly. I just wasn't interested. Bojang was about to concede the point despite Alex's disinterest when his sister walked in. She grabbed a plate and headed for their table, avoiding eye contact as conversation buzzed around the room. May I sit here? She asked, indicating the seat across from her brother and next to her fiance. Alex looked at her but said nothing. Please do, Hoshi said after a moment. Tao loves to see his auntie, don't you? Auntie Alam, he cooed. Alam smiled without making eye contact with the others and started on her breakfast. What's on your agenda today, Elijah? Hoshi asked. I have morning duty with the tiny ones, and Bojang is. What was it again? Mom and I will be pruning in the arcology. Then I'll prep food for lunch and dinner. He shrugged. Not too glamorous. Nice. I'm hauling around air filters all day. I guess when you've got assets like these, they're going to put it to work, eh? Elijah said and flexed his biceps, winking at Yoko, who giggled and rolled her eyes. How about you, Alex? Alam asked. She placed her hand on his and gazed at him. He chewed slowly and swallowed before answering. Neither pulled away nor entwined his hands with hers. Dad's got me reviewing logs with him. Busy work. With Alex's curt tone, that line of conversation died. Yoko pushed her untouched oatmeal away with a sigh and placed a hand on her round abdomen. How did you survive, Hoshi? Nothing is remotely appetizing anymore. Hoshi bounced Tao on her knee while she leaned in conspiratorially and whispered one word: nutmeg. She shrugged while her husband rolled his eyes at the memory. Don't know why it worked, but I put it on everything. Worth a shot. I'm going to waddle over to the kitchen. Hoshi looked pointedly at Elijah, who laughed and shook his head. Nope, Mama says pregnant ladies need their exercise. Hey, at least Alim can sympathize with. His voice trailed away as he remembered Alex's presence. Alex glowed, but it wasn't Elijah earning his glare. What's this? He growled. Wojang turned and followed his gaze, doing a quick double take. Gabriel entered the dining room and with his parents, David and Anna, who headed towards the serving area. Anna holding her granddaughter Maria. David gave the room a long look, then left the youths to themselves. Bojang forced a smile when Gabriel wandered slowly over. Gabe, how's it going? You ever going to come spar with us again? I don't know. Maybe. He cleared his throat, running a hand through his disheveled wavy hair and smiling nervously. Hey, Alex. I didn't get a chance to say anything last night, but I wanted to tell you personally that I'm sorry about this whole mess, and I'm glad you were being so cool and there's no hard feelings. Alex rose slowly, stepping around the edge of the table. His dark eyes narrowed. No hard feelings? You bastard. Wipe that stupid grin off your face, screw up. You even realize that what you stole from me? Hey, get off yourself. I'm trying to. You get off without any punishment or censure. Meanwhile, I get denied my second child. I'm cool? Are you stupid? He laughed or maybe choked, despite the room's sudden silence. It was unclear. Hoshi's gentle hand on Bojang's shoulder drew his attention to how tense he was. Guys, let's chill. Alex turned his back on Gabriel, who stood isolated between the table and the empty bar stools near the entrance. Hard feelings, Alex muttered, looking around the silent room. In the next row of tables, Aisha, seated next to Paige and her husband Michael, watched the scene frozen in place. Look, Gabriel said, then exhaled sharply. I know I screwed up. I'm trying to fix things. Alex pivoted, landing a right hook on the other man's jaw. Gabriel's head flew back, his feet tangled. He tilted backwards and started falling. Gasps echoed around the room, and everyone at the table rose. Wait, Alex shouted, reaching for the man's shirt but grasping air. A sharp crack rang out as Gabriel's head struck the bar corner and he dropped to the ground without a word. Crimson splashed on the floor. It was the first act of violence many of those present had witnessed in their lives. The stark reality of it, the mockery of karate bouts or virtual instances. Alam was at Gabriel's side in a moment, feeling the dampness growing in the back of the boy's head. Bojang and Elijah grabbed Alex, but he offered no resistance, stunned by the repercussions of his impulsive strike. No, came a feminine shriek from the center of the room. Aisha jumped up, knocking her chair over behind her, and rushed around the table and to where Gabriel lay. She shoved Alam, who skidded half a meter back. Get away, she shrieked in her face. Everyone rose, staring. In a heartbeat, David was by his son's side, checking his pulse. He snarled at those nearby. Give me a hand or get out of the way. Bojang and Elijah let go of Alex, stooped down, and grasped Gabriel's limbs. Michael came around to help, and the four carefully lifted him, leaving crimson stains spreading on the laminate floor. Bojang heard John's voice as he left. Please settle down. Now, the captain and the other parents will be here in a moment. Other than Tao's worried whimpers, there was silence in the room as they headed to the medical lab.
All right, outstanding. Like, yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Like I mentioned, like I'm following this story. I think I'm considerably behind where you read, but yeah, this is definitely heading in in an interesting area. If anybody has any questions, please like let them have put them down in the chat. Um, oh, like Randy, what did you think of having your story read?
It was very helpful to experience that part. For the first time, I realized, wow, there are a lot of names I'm throwing out to you,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was gonna be one of my questions. Um, really, I thought the dialogue was like when she was reading it, like it kind of like didn't occur to me that like it's a person on Hidden Gems who's writing a story that were like it kind of sounded like a book you like I'm like listening to an audiobook type thing as far as the writing and like I wasn't even like yeah I can't explain I guess what I'm saying like it's very well written like the dialogue and like with all those different names that we don't have the benefit of having read enough to know who they are. It was still like I was able to still like keep it in my mind like what's going on. So that I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah, one of my craft sort of dilemmas is when I have a character, I have an impulse to give them a name, even if they're not directly important, because I feel like it builds a world. And but there's also a cost to that, and the reader has it in the back of their mind: should I keep caring about this character or not? And it takes some experience to know if that's good or bad, or how to signpost that, and so on. But it is something that I've been thinking about.
Well, like I mean, like with you mentioning that, like no one on this ship is gonna survive. I take it that there's one of the themes of the book is, just AI, like creating life, like God creating life versus humans creating life. I mean, there's a lot. Like I could just keep going on. What would you say is like the central thing along those lines that like the book is about as far as themes and and like what did you think about that?
And to be clear, I mean, no one from the start will survive to the end. There will be somewhat of a happy-ish ending, right? Someone will be alive at the end. I'll say that much. But yeah, as to the themes, it's funny when you'd asked me what it was about when I was first writing it. I would have said like explain the plot and these people go on a spaceship and so on. And then as I revise it and and finish it up and think about it, what becomes more important is the theme, and I've been thinking about that. So basically, it's about a search for a legacy and meaning in a world where they're in a very constrained circumstances. And a lot of people, a lot of the characters are trying to work out what their lives are about and are for, even though they're in a situation not of their own choosing.
I mean, I see a lot of correlations with like, I guess like modern times even, and like some of the things that people are struggling with, like, like literally, they're in space. Their job basically is to reproduce and create a society, and like I guess you could say that nowadays, like society is like in this flux state where like creation is taking place, but there's issues that need to be dealt with, and like I'm sure like you're gonna have like correlated issues like in your book. So like that's kind of like where my mind was going as she was reading. Like, would you say that there's any accuracy to that?
Oh, certainly. And right now it's hard to predict what the future will be like. Although um, I had to take a rough guess, but we could, from where we are at right now, right? A lot of people are predicting different things, but yeah, there's more comparisons that could be made from this seemingly out there circumstance to where we live now than it might seem at first.
Yeah, and I mean, even with like now, like they're talking about potentially going to Mars, and it wouldn't be like a lifetime journey, but if anybody were to make that journey, I think it's like a year one way or something to that effect. So it is things that like we may encounter in our lifetime to some extent. Like there may be a long trip that people have to make. So I thought it was great. Pav, like how's the proper way to pronounce your name?
Muted myself. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, it's Bhavana, which is why I left it as Bhav because I think
Pav.
that's easier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Um, basically, oh, I know. I was just asking like how to properly pronounce your name because I was gonna ask like, well, what was the experience like reading out loud for the first time?
Yeah, this is completely new to me. I've not done this anywhere before, so I'm glad to have an opportunity to read, and I'm glad it was Randy's because this is a very different kind of story. Like it's also a mix of a lot of races and there's a lot of diversity, and I like that. And to be honest, it did not strike me that John the God is actually AI, but I think that's because I kind of missed out on the previous chapters.
Yeah, I
Uh,
should have mentioned that. That's one of the thoughts that I had when you were reading. I was like, damn, I should have pointed out that he's AI. So, like, yeah, the story actually is, like, from what I've read, I've only read the first few chapters, so I guess, like, I'm in a position to say what it's about from a reader's perspective. Like, the AI has basically, like, become, like, the AI has joined entities with, like, an actual, but the AI thinks it's an actual person. And it's now, like, going about doing what it's doing, and like one of the things that's going on is like people have been convinced to go to like this new planet, and it's a very very long journey, and like there's going to be generations that are going to be on this trip, and like that's kind of like where it begins. So I actually don't even know how far we are right now in as far as this chapter, but like yeah, it's definitely like that perspective. um, Let me read Lucia's question out loud so Randy could speak to it out loud. Lucia asked, you said this is part of an anthology, but is it our world or one that you created? Also, do you have plans to write books prior to this one, or have you already?
Yeah, thanks for that. When I said anthology, basically what I was trying to say is that each chapter here has its own subplot, as well as contributing to the overarching plot as a whole. But the what starts on Substack, the first chapter that you have access to, is the start of the story, and so I haven't written really any books prior to this. This is the first book. I've done some short fiction writing and fan fiction and stuff like that over the years.
Oh, okay. I thought you were still gonna you're still gonna be like talking. Um, if anybody, okay, Lucy is typing. If anybody has any other questions, like Black Mirror, she says.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I'm cagey about the date. I don't say exactly when it starts because there's various assumptions about what the technology and the political situation will be. Um, but it's like somewhere around the end of the century.
Yeah, like that's kind of like the sense that I got, and I respect the answer too because like in a way you can see how it could be sooner or how it can be like later, and like sci-fi is always like fascinating because it takes like actual technology and kind of like increases its like intensity, I guess. So like you have to be kind of aware of like what's actually going on. So like I always like to check in on that. Um,
Yeah, if I say one more thing to that, basically the story origin or the germ of it was that I wanted to write over several generations, and I knew that if I set it somewhere on Earth, that would require a lot of research and history and stuff. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll make it sci-fi. It makes that part a little easier. But that does mean that then I have to think about what the history is going up to that point, and then everything else of the world's creation.
okay, so and it's available on Substack, you said. So people could just like find the link in your profile. Do you have it there?
Yep, yep. And you're very good about keeping track of what everyone's doing on this Discord. So other people here have found me that way, and vice
Okay.
versa.
Okay, so that's good to know. So if no one has any questions, thank you, Pav, for reading. It came across wonderful. Thank you for the story, Randy. I am enjoying reading it. It is one of the things that I have read by gems that I think like is one of the outstanding things that I want to keep track of. So I will continue reading. And with that, we will conclude this Gemcast. We'll get the graphics done and we'll have it up on YouTube as soon as we can. But like, yeah, thank you everybody for attending, and that concludes today's Gemcast.
Thank you both.